Hello again, third grade, and we are back to Roman mythology part 2. You got it. We just ended with our uh, little bit of information on some gods and goddesses, and we ended at Vesta, who apparently I am right now in this coin. Look at that. And we are moving on to some more gods and goddesses. So let's continue our journey, shall we? Our next goddess on the list is Ceres. Ceres is the goddess of agriculture, grain, crops, and the goddess of the harvest. So she would be the goddess people would go talk to or give tribute to when it was time to plant for farming, when it was time to take care of the crops, when it was time to harvest things. She was the one that people would be talking to and asking lots of questions to and praying to and asking tribute to or giving tribute to. She was honored during the April celebration of Cerealia. That celebration happened somewhere between the middle and end of April, depending on who was ruling at the time, what the weather was like, and a whole bunch of other situations. But basically, middle to end of April is when and it would be a week-long celebration to the harvest and to Ceres in hopes that she would bless the Romans with a fantastic and bountiful amount of food. It was said that she discovered wheat and brought that and farming to the people in order to teach them how to live off the land. She was honored during Roman weddings, and her symbol is down in the corner there. It looks like a weapon, but it's not. It's a sai, and a sai, that's a handheld sai, and you'd hold it and then hold the wheat and chop it off with that sharp, very sharp looking farming tool. And that is how wheat was actually harvested and crops were harvested way back in the day before we had tractors and motorized vehicles and electricity and all that fun stuff. There is a breakfast food named after her. Can you guess what it is? If you said cereal, you are correct. Ceres, cereal. Her Greek version is Demeter. And in Viking land, in Norse mythology, she would be Sif. Couple more pictures. Yes, we have moved on to Vulcan. God of fire, foraging, forging, metalworking, and volcanoes. I like him. He's cool. Volcanoes and all. He's typically shown with his blacksmith hammer. Yes, this is also his symbol. He is known to have forged the lightning bolts for Jupiter, to have made all the armor and weapons for the Romans and the gods, and was said to have come up with all the designs for all their armor, their weapons, their shields, and brought them to the original generals and kings to give them ideas on how to protect themselves and be safe in battle. So his symbol, of course, is the hammer. Those who appreciated him, those who worshipped him, those who were in the army, gave lots of sacrifices to Vulcan to protect their homes from fire. Fire was certainly a big concern back in the Roman times because they didn't have light. Like, we have lights. They didn't have electricity. So their only light was by lighting a fire in their house, or little sconces with candles and lights and candles and flame everywhere. So they would definitely give tribute to Vulcan to prevent their houses from burning down. He married Venus, and his Greek name was Hephaestus. In the Viking terms, in Norse mythology, Thor is the closest god, but if we're really looking for an exact connection, the closest really would be the dwarves of the Norse mythology. The dwarves were fantastic forgers and worked with metalworking, spent time hanging around volcanoes quite a bit, and were exceptional in the building of armor and weapons. And right now I am standing here, looking very much like Vulcan. I will move that picture. All right, now put my picture back up here. We are up to Neptune, god of fresh water, of the oceans, basically god of all water. All water, streams, lakes, rivers, pretty much all of it. He was also the god of horses. His large celebration was on July 23rd, which was called Neptunalia, a huge summer water celebration, contests, competitions in the water, everything to do with water. Giant buildings for public baths that were built and dedicated to Neptune. It was a big water celebration. He is seen with legs or with a mermaid tail, just like King Triton of The Little Mermaid, if you've ever seen that movie. His symbol is actually that giant staff with 3 prongs, which is called a trident. His Greek name, or his Greek alias, is Poseidon. And in Viking mythology, Norse mythology, Ran and Gerur are similar in their powers and what they do and what they represent. It is said that Neptune would ride the waves in the shores, and instead of just riding the waves, he'd actually be riding his horses, his magical steeds, into the shoreline. That picture is actually a very famous painting, and it's Neptune riding the ocean waves, and those ocean waves, when those waves crest over and that white bubbly sea foam happens, that's actually what you're seeing are the horses of Neptune. Moving on to Apollo. Apollo is son of Jupiter and twin brother to Diana. He is the god of quite a bit because people loved him. God of music, of truth, of beauty, of prophecy, which means seeing something into the future. He is the god of the sun, of light, of poetry, god of healing, god of medicine. He has several different symbols: the snake, a laurel for your head, a lyre, which is a handheld little harp. His 7 strings on his lyre actually represented the 7 planets. But wait, Mrs. Colley, there are more than 7 planets. I know. But back in the age of the Romans, they only knew of 7 planets because they could only see that far. What? No! Totally. He had a son, Asclepius, who was the god of healing. And Asclepius was a little too good at his job. So good, in fact, of healing every single person he helped, that Jupiter knew that this couldn't continue. I mean, Asclepius healed everyone. He would go to the healing centers, like our hospitals and our medical centers, and he'd heal everyone. He took a lot of the magics and the powers that different gods and deities had given him, and he just healed everyone. And suddenly no one was sick or hurting anymore, and everything was perfect, and everyone was living very, very long lives. And Jupiter got a little worried, and he let Apollo know. He said, this can't continue. Asclepius needs to back off a little bit and let people, some people actually do need to die at some point. It's a tough topic to talk about, but people shouldn't be living into their 150-year-old lives. They just shouldn't get that old. And Apollo tried to talk to Asclepius, but he was so determined to help everyone he could that it didn't stop. And because of that, Jupiter sent down a lightning bolt and ended his life, but was still gave him the honor of being celebrated as a god. And he actually brought him up and placed him in the sky as a constellation. Bonus for you, for those of you listening, if you can send me info about this constellation, I've got a bonus trivia award for my 3rd grade class. So if you can send me information about the Asclepius constellation, there's a very cool little stuffed animal thing in it for you. Moving on, Apollo's Greek name is Apollo. It didn't change, it just stayed the same. Vikings, pretty close to Baldur. I mean, not exactly, but pretty close. Also note that Apollo drove the golden chariot and brought the sun up every morning for the sunrise, and in the evenings it brought the sun back down to its resting place. A couple of pictures of Apollo. Here Apollo is with his twin sister, who we're about to learn about. And it's Diana, goddess of the moon, the hunt, and of children, a protector of children. She is the twin sister to Apollo. She is associated with woods, wild animals, and she has the ability to talk to and control animals. I love Diana. She, I think, is my favorite goddess. She's one of the 3 maiden goddesses who swore to never get married. Along with her would be Vesta and Minerva. They said, nope, we are good. We are going to go off because we are women and we are strong and we are tough and we don't need to get married and we can do everything because girls rule the world. That's what they decided. She, and my one I skipped over really quickly, protector of children. So although she never got married and never had kids of her own, she was a protector of all of Rome's children. Her Greek alias is Artemis, and in Viking, her closest match would be Mani. Her symbols, of course, besides the moon, would be her 2 white wolves and a stag or a deer, and she was also a very impressive archer. Yes, we move on to Mars, god of war. Okay then. All right, you go, Mars. Mars is married to Venus. He is Juno's son. So Juno, wife of Jupiter. This is her son, Mars. His celebrations were held in March. March was actually named for him. So you know that month we just had, March? It was originally in Latin and in Rome was called Martius. It's named after Mars. So now we have March being named after a god. January is named after Janus. By the way, Juno, his mom, June, the month of June, was named after her. And there's a few other months in there that we'll get to as we move forward. You're going to find out that the Vikings named our days of the week. The Romans named pretty much everything else. We took a lot from them. Mars represented, although he was the god of war, he represented not the power to destroy things, which is what most people think war is about, but he actually believed in using military power as a way to secure peace, which meant we should have very strong armies, not to go off and destroy people. We should just have really, really, really strong armies so that everyone is intimidated enough not to start a war. Because if someone starts a war, then they know this giant, scary army is going to come after them. So Mars was all about, we're going to be prepared, we're going to have a very well-trained army, and we're never going to have to use it because everyone around us will know that if they bother us, we're going to come with them with this giant army. And that was one of Rome's key beliefs, was we're going to have a giant, tough, intimidating army, and hopefully we'll never have to use it because it's tough and intimidating. Therefore, peace. He was the father of Romulus and Remus. His Greek version is Ares. Ares, on the other hand, was all about, in Greek, all about destruction and war and having a large army to go off and cause destruction and war. And Ares was a little bit more aggressive than the Roman equivalent, than Mars. And then in Viking world, actually, Odin is a pretty close match. So a couple pictures, statues of Mars. Then we move on to Venus, goddess of love, of beauty, of prosperity. She is married to Mars, and she gave women the power to influence other men. So Venus, this is all her doing, the way that women can walk around and say, yes, listen to me because I am an awesome woman. That's all. Venus gave that to the Romans so that women could help make decisions and not always be ordered around. So the Romans believed that was all Venus's duty or doing. Her symbols were the rose, and she was born out of the sea in a clamshell. It's a cool way to be born, I guess. Her Greek version is Aphrodite, and the closest Norse mythology person would be Freya. Mercury! Oh, he's one of my favorites as well. So, Mercury, god of money gain and commerce, communication, messages, god of travelers, god of luck, of thieves, of trickery. He also was known to guide lost souls into the underworld. So, if you didn't get there the first time on your own, he was known to come help find you and bring your soul to where it needed to go. He was one of the most popular gods of Rome. He was known to have a bit of a sense of humor, a little bit more lighthearted, not as serious as some of the other gods. His symbols, oh, he's got a lot of them. He's got a winged hat. He has winged shoes. He has the heraldic staff with two entwined snakes. And that he's holding in this picture was actually a gift from Apollo. It's called a heraldic staff, which is meant to celebrate commerce, communication. It's meant to be held by someone who is about to give an important speech, and Apollo gave him this as a gift. Now, Hermes is his Greek equivalent, and Loki is the closest in Norse mythology, although Mercury was known for some trickery, and he was the patron god of thieves and good luck and bad luck. He wasn't as mean or deceptive as Loki was. He was a little bit happier. Now, you see that staff in his arm there. You're probably thinking, I have seen that before. Yes, you have, but it's being used incorrectly. Let's take a look. Many of you have probably seen something very similar to this design when it comes to medical type symbols. Many hospitals, many medical insurances, many places that make medical equipment have used that symbol. Many pharmacies have used that symbol, and it's actually used incorrectly. That symbol is called, although it's called a heraldic staff, it's also called Caduceus. And a Caduceus is a symbol of trade, of commerce, of business, of communication. The symbol that should be used as a symbol of healing and medicine is the rod of Asclepius. Remember Asclepius? We just learned about him. He had a rod with a snake on it as well. And that was his rod or his staff that he used to help heal people. So that's the symbol that should be used. Most places that end up using a symbol end up using something similar to this, which is actually incorrect. Instead of using the symbol for healing, they're using a symbol that says, we want to make lots of money. back to Mercury. All right, and we are almost done. We have one last god to talk about, and his name is Pluto, god of the underworld. He is also the god of minerals, because where would you find minerals? Underground, exactly. He's also the god of wealth. Strange connection there. He is married to Proserpine, also known as Proserpina. Uh, Proserpine is the daughter of Ceres. And actually, he got married to her in a very strange way. He originally kidnapped her. He saw her out in a field gathering flowers one day and kidnapped her and took her to the underworld because after falling in love with him instantly, just by looking at her, he thought kidnapping her and taking her to the underworld was the best plan of action to make her fall madly in love with him. It didn't work. She didn't fall madly in love with him the instant that he kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. I wouldn't recommend doing that. It's not going to make people fall in love with you. But he was so determined to please her that he set up grand meals and feasts and brought people in to entertain her and tried his best to make her fall in love with him. All the while this is happening, Proserpine's mom, Ceres, is looking for her daughter and is suddenly incredibly sad and incredibly depressed because her daughter is now missing. She doesn't know where she is, and she is lost and so saddened. And because of this, she causes all the fields to go barren and empty in Rome. And there's a great famine. People are starving, and the people of Rome are asking Jupiter, "Help! Please help! We have no food. There's nothing to farm. The land is bad. It's cold. We need help." And Jupiter decides, I suppose I should intervene. This isn't going to end well because if all of the Romans die, then there's no one to worship us. So Jupiter heads down to the underworld and talks to his brother Pluto and says, "Hey, you need to give the girl back. She needs to go back home, be with her mom, because her mom is causing problems for all the humans, and all the humans need to live, so we have someone to actually, send us tribute." And Pluto, yeah, I suppose tribute is a good thing. And he says, "But I can't let her back forever. I can't just send her back to the real world. I can't." And Jupiter says, "Why not?" And Pluto said, "Well, while she was here, she ate one seed from a pomegranate. And the rules are once you eat a food from the underworld, you can't leave." And Jupiter said, "There must be something. There must be something. She ate a seed." And so they agree and they talk it over. And they compromise that for 4 months out of the year, for 1/3 of the year, Proserpine will remain in the underworld because she ate that one pomegranate seed. The rest of the year, she can be back up with her mother, um, above ground. And so, because of that, for 4 months out of the year, for that 1/3 that Proserpine is spending with Pluto in the underworld, Ceres is sad and miserable, and it is cold outside, and crops won't grow, and the fields are barren. And when Ceres gets her daughter back, that is the springtime. That is April, and the land starts coming back alive again, and the sun comes out, the ground is warm and starts to grow things again. And so that is how the Romans represented their seasons. When it was winter time, that's when Proserpine went down to Pluto. and it was cold and miserable and awful. And when she returned home, that's when the spring came again. Pluto, although used to be a planet, is now a dwarf planet named after him. Smallest little dwarf planet, the end of the Milky Way. He owns CERES. Woo, things are falling. The three-headed dog, which you might have probably seen from Harry Potter. And CERES guards the gates of the underworld. In some depictions, he's nice and small. In others, he's large. His Greek name is Hades, and in Norse, he has a female equivalent named Hel. And in all of his statues, he is represented with his fantastic three-headed dog. He doesn't go anywhere without him. The end, or is it? Well, that is the end for now. But if you are a third grader, there is more on the way. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed learning about these. And don't forget about that trivia challenge. Asclepius, he's a constellation. What does he look like? Tell me what you know. Tell me something about that constellation, and I have a prize for you. Bye, third grade.